Republic of the Midwest. Capitals Omaha and Chicago. In the early 1800s, much of the United States government and military are en route to the Dakotas and Nebraska region in order to negotiate a peace deal with the Plains Indians. At first, negotiations are going well, but unfortunately a massive blizzard in the region causes massive destruction and the deaths of all U.S. government personnel that traveled to the region. The death of essentially all high-ranking U.S. personnel causes the nation to become weak and collapse. 5 new nations arise from this: the Federation of Texas, the Kingdom of Montgomery, the Republic of New England, the Republic of the Midwest, and the Union of Dover, while Canada and Mexico take over the rest of the US. At first, things are okay within the new Republic of the Midwest, but soon a massive civil war called the Corn War occurs within the Midwest. The war is between Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio over where the capital of the new nation would be. Eventually, the two sides come to a stalemate and decide on making 2 capitals, Omaha and Chicago, where 2 halves of the government would be stationed. Later in World War I, they sided with the Central Powers and basically destroyed the entire British Army in North America. Through this, they signed a treaty with the British, which stated the British would hand over Colorado, Wyoming, and Montana to the Midwest. And later in World War II, they sided with the Allies and basically took over the role the United States had in our timeline. Today, they have the largest economy in North America, a large nuclear program, and a thriving space station. Their greatest ally is Germany, who has strong, influential culture within the Midwest. German Iceland. Capital Reykjavik. In this timeline, the NATO treaty has a statement in it which states that once you have joined NATO, you may not leave, much like the United States policy. In the early 90s, Iceland wishes to leave NATO and begin becoming a more neutral nation. This infuriates Germany, them being the ones that originally pushed for the once you're in, you can't get out part of the treaty. Iceland attempts to stay neutral, but nevertheless Germany launches an invasion of Iceland. Very quickly they capture Reykjavik and overthrow the government. Germany then installs a new puppet government and renames the nation German Iceland. Today they are very much like how Iceland is in our timeline today, but they have much more German-influenced culture. The Imperial Canadian Union, capital New Vancouver. In 1982, a massive series of revolts and protests occur all throughout Canada. One of the protests even goes as far as to destroy the entire city of Vancouver. The people call for a Canadian empire. They wish to show the world that they are not a joke. Eventually, they get their wish as rebels overthrow the Ottawa government on May 23rd of 1983. On May 23rd of 1987, the people of the Imperial Canadian Union celebrate their 5th anniversary, which they call Empire Day. In celebration of this day, the dictator decides to expand the empire for the first time and begin a full-scale invasion of New Zealand. This move proves very popular with the Canadian people. This inspires the next dictator to start a large military campaign from 1990 to 1998 to conquer Portugal, Venezuela, South Africa, Vietnam, and Greenland. The campaign succeeds and they truly become a worldwide empire. Today they are the most powerful country on the planet and have aspirations for a worldwide Canadian empire. Lauridia, capital Garth. Around sometime in the late 1600s to early 1700s, the Spanish had discovered the Caribbean and began setting up new colonies in the region rapidly. The King of England considers this a national embarrassment and begins sending hundreds of settlers into the Caribbean to discover land in the area. Soon, a ship of settlers led by Lauren Garth landed in what we know as Mexico. Lauren then founded the city of Garth and established the English colony of Lauridia. Fast forward to the late 1700s, and the Lauridians are inspired by the Americans' fight for freedom and take up arms against the British. After a long and costly war, they gain their independence at the Siege of Garth and establish the nation of Lauridia. Today, Lauridia is a passive first world country, similar to Canada, but much more British in culture. They still retain their historic rivalry with their Caribbean neighbors to this day. Freelandia, capital Merk. Freelandia is a large island in the middle of the Indian Ocean with a rich history of empires. Most of the island's history consists of being under one nation. Over history, 4 empires have laid claim to the island. It is unknown exactly when the first empire formed, but it is estimated to have started around 3000 BC. The first empire of the island were the Zukos, an ethnic group from the northwest of the island with African roots. The next empire were the Coolers, who came from the southeast of the island with Indonesian roots. And the final ethnic empire were the Merkers, who were 100% ethnically Frillian and came from the center of the island. Fast forward to the 1600s, and after 1,000 years of Merk rule, Sweden discovers the island. Sweden begins colonizing the island brutally, killing almost all native Frillians. By the mid-1600s, Sweden has completely conquered the island. Later in the 1700s, Sweden experiences a massive financial crash and goes bankrupt. This forces Sweden to let go of all of its colonies, including Finlandia. Today, Finlandia is a peaceful nation which has barely any pollution, the world's largest video game market, and the world's best education and healthcare systems. It also has the world's largest population of frilled lizards, which is how it gets its name. The Italian Empire. Capital Rome. In World War II, the Allies begin to see that the Axis are winning the war. Mussolini considers an Axis victory a loss for Italy, as Germany would end up being the superior over Italy. Behind the scenes, Churchill and Mussolini make a deal for Italy to switch sides in the war in exchange for some lands. The treaty is signed by Churchill, Mussolini, Roosevelt, and Stalin. When Italy officially switches sides in the war, Hitler is furious and begins attacking Italian Greece and northern Italy. Italy loses northern Italy to the Germans, but when Allied support finally arrives in Rome, they begin to push back the Germans in the north. 10 months later, America drops Fat Man and Little Boy on Japan, and the Allies win the war. Italy gains many lands through this and is officially renamed the Italian Empire. Today, the empire is a capitalist republic and has a weaker economy than most of Europe, but a much stronger military than most of Europe, which equals the UK. The Bostonian Empire. Capital Boston. The colony of Massachusetts was once one of the most powerful colonies in the British Empire, but lost everything when the United States became a country and entered a long period of economic and general depression in the state. Fast forward to the War of 1812, and the colony of Canada is sick of fighting the Americans and calls upon Massachusetts to rebel and help Canada win the war. Canada helps Massachusetts take over all of New England, and Massachusetts renames itself the Bostonian Empire. Canada soon realizes it created something too powerful, as the Bostonian Empire takes New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, Delaware, Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, and Florida. The Bostonian Empire is now truly an empire. Today it has a large economy and an extremely large military. It is also a NATO member and still retains a good relationship with Canada. The Kingdom of Leveled. Capital Levion. Now here's the thing with this country. This one is a joint creation between Jose Gonzalez, I think that's how I pronounce her name, and me, CosmicMapping. Here's the thing, he basically sent the history, like the backstory of this nation, and he said I could do whatever I want from that point on, which I loved because I was already extremely interested in the nation. So the first part of this history is written by him, and the second part is written by me. You can tell which is which once we get into it. So let's get into it. The Kingdom of Leveled started as a mere county in the region of eastern Iberia. In 1403, Leveled elected an expansionist government, and in 1405, Leveled was able to successfully capture and hold a region near Barcelona called Tarragona. After this, Leveled became an absolute war machine, expanding all over Iberia. Later into the war, Leveld's forces were able to capture Figueres and Portbou, which bordered the French in the north. Leveld used these places as a base to launch an invasion of France, but utterly failed and lost the war with the French. They lost again to the French in the second invasion of Andorra. Fast forward 10 years later, and Leveld has plans to expand into northern Africa. On June 3rd, 1417, Leveld was able to take a small port city in northern Algeria, but at a high cost of life. Seeing this problem, Leveld invaded and captured Ibiza and established a naval base to supply troops in North Africa. This paid off, as only weeks later the Leveldese flag was raised high in Algerian lands. Fast forward to 1480, and Leveld is suffering with many wars, debts, and countless other problems. Leveld starts to sign peace treaties to end wars that are causing much destruction, but at high costs, sending Leveld into a financial crisis. Because of this, Leveld goes into isolation for a while. Fast forward to 1517, and Leveld has not only recovered, but is thriving. It uses its flourishing economy for the good of the people, and soon enough, by 1530, most of the population is rich. But later in 1545, Spain sees this new rich Leveled as a threat and declares war on Leveled. The Spanish capture a castle from the Leveldese forces and slaughter the captured garrison. In response, Leveled begins to capture and slaughter Spanish civilians. For every town captured by Leveled, 1/3 of its population would be killed. Fast forward to 1593 and Leveled is in turmoil. The Spanish won the war and made a heavy peace deal. Leveled's economy crumbled under the peace deal, and the value of the Leveldese currency dropped. In 1601, Leveldese territories begin to slowly be taken by other nations. In 1602, the kingdom announced bankruptcy. Finally, in 1603, the kingdom of Leveled had been defeated by the Spanish at the Siege of Levian, and the kingdom had been annexed. Fast forward to 1937, over 300 years later, and the Leveldese people want their glorious nation back, and see the start of the Spanish Civil War as an opportunity. They cede from Spain, becoming a third side in the Civil War, fighting both the Republicans and the Nationalists. Due to superior numbers and a large air force, Leveled is able to capture Burgos and Madrid by 1938 and unite Spain under the Leveldese flag. A year later, when World War II arrives, Leveled decides to side with the Axis, taking it as an opportunity to expand across Europe. Leveled sails across the Mediterranean to fight the French in Algeria and capture old Leveldese settled cities in northern Africa. Due to Leveled entering the war, Hitler is able to conquer France extremely fast, as France falls in only 6 days. Leveled also annexes South France, so Vichy France never exists in this timeline. Fast forward to 1943, and Leveled begins to see that the Axis are losing the war. Leveled makes a deal with the Allies to switch sides, and Leveled joins the Allies. Leveled invades and captures all islands in the West Mediterranean. Leveldese forces then begin to push into Italy and even capture Rome itself. By the end of the war, Leveled is one of the most powerful and rich countries on Earth. Today, Leveled is a constitutional monarchy with the world's largest economy, third largest military, and most tourists worldwide. It is also a NATO member and has strong ties with the United States and Russia.